Hello and welcome to your orbiting brick. Yet again, I procrastinated on returning my crew stranded around Serran. So in a different save file, I am doing a different mission to Serran. Serran, however you pronounce it. It's a moon of Sonnah added by the New Horizons planet pack. And so I want to do a base there for a few reasons. First of all, been a while since I did a surface base. Second, I don't think I've ever done a surface base on a celestial body that has an atmosphere, but Serran does, so I can make use of some interesting parts from one of the Benji 10 mods. So we're launching with quite a large launch vehicle, 4 engines on the first stage from Cyroengines Expansion, and the main reason we need such a large launch vehicle is actually due to the physical volume of the payload and not its actual mass. It isn't all that heavy, but it does take up quite a bit of space in the payload fairing. So yeah, ascent, not the most ideal. I don't have the best control authority of over the first stage, so we have to pitch over pretty late. Eventually we do in fact pitch, and we can deploy the second stage and just in the fairing. Where you can now see the structure of the base. I was inspired by various lunar base concepts to have one core module with multiple modules attached to it in that fashion. I originally planned on launching the modules separately, but I realized it was more efficient and just faster to do it in one launch. So I did. You can also see the heat shields that the craft will use to land on Serran. And yeah, each of the modules, they're not actually identical. They do all have an inflatable module from stock like Space Station Parts Redux, but the end section has different parts in it. And one of them has life support consumables, the other has science experiments, and the other has some control parts. So anyways, we just in the second stage, and we're about to insert into orbit. And almost. Well, yeah, there we go, 70 kilometers, and now it's enough, 90 kilometers. And there we go, in orbit. And now we can plot our maneuver to Serran. It's a pretty standard interplanetary transfer, although not exactly interplanetary. Again, I'm using the New Horizons planet pack, so Kerbal and Serran are both moons of the same gas giant Sonnah, which you might see pretty soon. Yeah, we've burned to escape Kerbal. And I tried to get the center of mass in line with the center of thrust, but that wasn't exact, so we have to use RCS during the burns, which will complicate things a bit, but the mission will actually go pretty well, just as planned. I can see Sonnah there in the distance. And we're now time working towards our mid-course correction. And so here we go. Fairly short burn, completed pretty quickly using the Wolfhound engine of the transfer stage. Also note that this thing is currently being powered by solar panels, though that might not be the best choice on a celestial body that has, a rotation, and thus the base will be in a night for a significant portion of time. That's where the other means of powering the base will come into play, which is what was actually added by that Benji 10 mod I was talking about. Anyways, we approach Serran and immediately overshoot our orbital insertion burn. We now begin burning. And yeah, this will just aim to put us in a very elliptical orbit, which we can slowly lower using maximal use of the Oberth effect. By burning a periapsis, we can maximize the amount of delta V saved. Anyways, once that burn is complete, which will actually finish it slightly before the maneuver is done. And we can then time warp around and then do another burn to lower our orbit even further. Except I realized, wait, I have a heat shield, I can just do some aero braking. So I decided I'll do that after this pass. So we're going to lower our orbit once again. And then we'll time warp up to apoapsis and actually perform essentially the orbit burn that will, again using these heat shields, allow us to slow down into a far lower orbit and do our landing. So we do the orbit burn, have some trouble igniting the Wolfhound engine, but eventually ignites. But yeah, we now approach the atmosphere, which I believe begins around 73 kilometers. I sped up the footage here quite a bit since it's a fairly slow process, but fairly soon you should see some plasma building up on the heat shields. And actually just skipping ahead to when that starts. Beautiful effects from Firefly there. And I actually was somewhat surprised at how stable this craft was, just entering the atmosphere, even without any additional drag on the just back of the craft. But then again, I do have quite a few reaction wheels on this. And so, we continue our, well, I guess we'll actually briefly leave the atmosphere. And I might be doing some RCS corrections right now. But we're not going to insert back into orbit after this. We are going to land directly from this re-entry. It's not even, well yeah, now it will be re-entry since, again, we briefly left the atmosphere. And now we've changed into our orientation for landing. And you can see we have more heat shields at the back of the craft than at the front to make sure it remains stable. As you can see, that didn't work great. A bit of instability that causes some heating on parts of the base, but it survives and can deploy its parachutes. Despite Serran having a very thin atmosphere, I was able to add enough parachutes where the base could land without having engine power. So we jettison the heat shield modules. And this is a mistake on my part. I will jettison this lower heat shield far too late, which will cause issues later on. Yeah, the heat shield detaches. We even have some RCS on the base to correct its attitude so it lands just upright. And so we can deploy the landing gear and accidentally land directly on top of the debris of the heat shield. That was not planned. And all my testing, that never occurred. However, we can try and use the auto-correcting legs of the base to try and correct for that. That will not go great, and the base will be left at a 1.5 degree angle, I believe, which not the best. Hopefully any crewed expeditions will be able to somehow account for that. But yeah, we can then deploy the secret utility of this base, which are these wind turbines, added by Benji 10's Planetside Exploration, I believe. And yeah, these are actually really cool. There's a calculated wind direction and a wind speed, and they will generate electricity based on the orientation relative to that wind, how fast the wind is, and there's a bunch of interesting considerations to be made with wind turbines. But yeah, this space can now remain powered, and hopefully we can send crew to it fairly soon. Thank you for watching.